Alright, here's what we're going to do now. This truck came missing the rear right fender flare. Yeah, I did wash the truck real quick. These are big ones. They stick out roughly 1.5 inches. They go up roughly 4 3/8 or so, almost 4.5 inches. I found these. I thought I'd have to go with Bushwhacker, which are expensive, $468 or something, plus tax and shipping. And scoured the interweb, and I'll put the link down below. I found these on Fleabay. Unfortunately, this is how they arrived, right? And that's not on the shipper, that's on UPS. And the brown let me down, man. Usually UPS is really good, but I found the box blown out like this, thrown on the grass in the rain. So that was a little disappointing, but you know, whatever. These are plastic and they're not broken. So of course I only need one, Juan, and they're supposed to be OEM style fender flares. They're supposed to be 4.5 inches tall at the peak of the fender well, and they're supposed to be 1.5 inches wider, which is, if everything is right, they're the same as these. If they're not the same as these, I'll replace all four, but I'm trying to avoid that. So let me figure out which one is rear right, and hopefully it gets up to this. Oh, that's right, I was going to fix this. Rats. Shit. Hold on, I'll be right back. Looking at the fender well, I got some little dings, or something got pulled down here. Maybe that's what happened when this thing got torn off. So I'm going to take a rubber mallet and pound all these back in. This is the only little spot of rust, but honestly I'm just going to put some rust kill on there and then touch it up and then call it done. This new fender flare does not appear to cover that stripe, which is a little disappointing. But I don't really care. I'm going to touch it up with, I have touch-up paint, the Chrysler touch-up paint. Sorry, I'll put that there. Let me ding this back in. Let me come in and touch these guys up a little bit. And so that's as far as we're going to do. I dug the rust out of there. It's not through the metal, but it's definitely through the paint. Put some rust kill on there. A couple dabs of rusty metal primer. A couple dabs of some white. It is what it is. You see there's a crease in the paint anyway, where the old fender flare, which is why I just used the touch-up. I just put it back in the truck, but those little dipping touch-up paints, I just touched that up. That'll be barely visible. And it'll look fine running down the highway. So, took the dead blow, and I think I need to tap that a little more. Okay, this is where we're going to leave it tonight. I just came to realize that it would be so much easier if I pulled the wheel off of this thing. It's like 7:40 right now, sundown's in about another 20 minutes. I figure by the time I jack this thing up, get the wheel off, do whatever I got to do to get that in, put the wheel back, put it down, it's going to be another 1.5 to 2 hours, and I don't feel like working in the dark. So we're going to leave it here. I'm going to pick this video back up probably the day after tomorrow. Not that it matters, it's all going to be on one video, but you'll see it when it's done.
So you grab an Allen wrench to pull this center cap off. What's interesting is there are 8 Allen head cap screws in this plastic center cap. 5 of them are dummy cap, dummy screws, and 3 of them are legit. So I grab a 13/16 socket, 1/2 inch drive. I can get 6 of the lug nuts loose. And then those 2 there, boy, it just felt like I was putting way too much torque on them, and I didn't want to cause any damage. So I went old school, got my favorite Ugga wrench, and it pulled it off just fine. All I wanted to do really was loosen the lugs and then get it up in the air here. So I am playing safe. We're gonna block the tires because I'm a good boy, and we're gonna grab a bottle jack, heavy duty jack stand. Because we're splitting the difference between the curb and the gutter, I had to use these 6x6s. Fortunately, that's the 5.5 inches is the height of the curb around here, so it fit well. Put the bottle jack on there. You see the truck's coming up. Just want to get the tire just enough off the ground. Not too high off the ground, because then it makes it difficult to put the wheel back on. The wheel, this is a heavy wheel too, as a matter of fact. What am I going for? Oh, another 2x6. That jack stand's got a pretty broad footprint. It's a pretty heavy duty one. Let's go ahead and pull the rest of the rest of the lug nuts off, get that tire out of the way, and do what we have to do. I don't think this is the factory size lug nut. I do have the factory wrench, but it's not the right size, not for these aftermarket wheels. So my intention is to get a 13/16 deep socket, and then I'm going to put it in the lathe, and I need to shave the walls down slightly because it's got to be a pretty thin wall 13/16 socket. Maybe I'll do a video about that. Let's see. So I'm doing a little dry fit here of our OEM style aftermarket Fender flare eBay special. It does have two-way sticky tape on the inside there, so I got some Windex, a couple good wipe downs of the quarter panel there. Now what I do here, here's the trick, because this isn't the first time I put these things on, is I just start, there are four separate pieces of two-sided mounting tape, and I pull just the start of the tab off, and then you see I kind of bent it over, and then that way you can dry fit it for the most part, and then that little tab that you've got pulled up, you can pull that plastic tab off and the thing will stick right in place. So I went for the self tapper in the 12 o'clock position. The front and the rear of the wheel well here are a little bit tricky because I want to line them up with the speed nuts. The rear one has a plastic fender insert with two speed nuts in it, and I'm trying to find just that sweet spot in the flare. I was going to say in the fender, but in the flare, and so it lines up to the speed nut of the plastic fender insert. And surprisingly enough, spoiler alert, I hit all four without any extra holes. So that was pretty awesome, actually. It's a pretty good workout for my right hand too. I haven't done like really tough manual dexterity. I'm sorry, I've got distracted by shiny objects here. I haven't done a lot of this manual dexterity type work with my hands since I broke it back in January. So it's my index finger on my right hand got smashed up real bad, if you remember, but it's most of the way there. It actually felt pretty good to get it out and bang it around a little bit, put some tension on it. So of course, what am I doing here? I'm going to paint the screw heads because I don't want to see shiny silver screw heads. So a little dab of black paint, easy peasy. Life is good. I'm going to use a little fluid film in there. There are 4 holes on the inside of the fender well there, and I just loaded it up with fluid film. I suspect that's where the rust formed because it probably got some mud or something in there, but it fits pretty good. You'll see it. It fits nice, but again, you do see that wear mark from the old fender flare. So it's really, really close, and it's close enough that you'll never know, right? I mean, it's not like you're looking at them side by side. You've got a fender flare, one on either side of the truck. You're never looking at both at the same time, so it's going to do just fine. I like it. So I ended up putting 5 screws in, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. That makes 4, and then 1 at the 12 o'clock position equals 5. So these are interesting rims in that the space that's around the lug nuts is really, really tight. And just the weight of the wheel on the lug nuts made it pretty difficult to get the socket in there. And anyway, it'll be something I need to fabricate. I need to fab up either maybe taper. I need to find a thin wall 13/16 deep socket is what I need to do. Put it on the lathe, and I'll need to taper it so it fits in that socket well, and it also kind of helps the wheel line up on the lug nuts while it's not all the way against the backer of that rotor. 4-wheel disc brakes is pretty nice actually. This thing's got a pretty good stop considering it's a big heavy truck with these big heavy tires. So I'm using a torque wrench. I set the first setting at 70 pounds, and then of course you do every other one. You do your star pattern. 70 pounds, and then I did 115 was my second torque set, and then 145 is, don't quote me on that, I think that's what it was, but I looked up the torque spec. I think it was 145 foot-pounds. As a matter of fact, that sounds really, the more I say it, it sounds more correct. So I did it in 3 stages just so we didn't have any problems. and it looks pretty good. So that's how we're going to leave it. I'm quite satisfied with how these aftermarket flares fit. They fit well. Hopefully that mounting tape will hold for a good amount of service life there. I do have some better stuff if I need to upgrade it, but overall I'm really, really satisfied with how everything lined up, how it looks. It's very, very close to the other ones, and we're just going to roll with it. So thanks for watching. Gotta go, gotta run. See ya!